My talk is basically on reading theater and performance. Here the performance is a larger thing, so I will be mostly dealing with the folk performance or cultural performance per se. So that is the broader title. From a practitioner's point of view, that is my focus, because I don't want to do a practitioner as such, a practitioner in the sense of a spectator, in the sense of a researcher, in the sense of a director or a dramaturge, and getting into playing with the theater. So that is what exactly I'm thinking. So my lecture broadly, I have divided it into 3 parts. In the first part, I will be just introducing some of the key terms. So it may be of some useful for you, or it may be something like, it may help me to situate in what I am trying to speak. So I will be going into the key terms, as Srinath was telling yesterday about the epistemology. So I'm before getting into the epistemology, the ontological reality of theater as a practice. Everybody knows. I hope most of you are some way or the other way, once in a life might have related with the theater. I'm sure. I'm not able to see you. Otherwise, I should have asked how many people have seen a theater piece the last month. Generally, what happens, or last year. So generally, what happens, unluckily, being a theater man, I I keep seeing very few people raising the hand. So that itself shows the situation of theater in Indian reality. But here I'm not seeing you, but I'm sure that you being into literature, language, and culture will be some way or the other way associated yourself with theater. But I'm sure that we are all performing. Now you are performing before your cameras. I am performing before my camera. So we are cultivating or, standardizing some kind of behavioral patterns to cope up with the new reality. So the new reality is making us to perform differently and giving us a target that perform otherwise. If you perform otherwise, that is the target with us. So that is all. That is all to begin with. So the first part of my as I said, it's on the key terms. It is nothing but an initiation into some of the terms which you are very much familiar with. The second part I will be looking at how to read a performance tradition. Here I will be taking a performance tradition, basically a folk traditional performance traditions focused on Kerala. But mostly because I'm familiar with the Christian performance traditions, I'll be going into the example of a Christian performance tradition, how to read the Christian performance tradition from an insider and an outsider's point of view. Third part I'm going to do with reading theater text in different contexts. It is something like you being a literature student, you might have read theater text, but we had an experiment. When I was working with a workshop in the Christ University Theater literature students, I was trying to read a non-dramatic text with them and trying to make them into a theatricalization of that particular text. So I will be getting into that idea. And then I have consciously did some dramaturgical work and applied that text in another workshop context, that is in the social welfare schools context, where a set of students try to produce and enact and perform a play based on the text called Little Prince. That is Antoine Exupéry's text. It's very popular text. So I think you are most of you knowing the Little Prince text. Otherwise, there are quite a lot of versions are available. One of the mostly translated text. So I'm trying to get into how that text is read as a text, and how that text is read as a dramaturge, and how it is materialized as a theater performance. This is the larger outlay of my talk. So the first part is the key terms. In the key terms, we come across some kind of themes like key terms like drama, theater, and performance. That is the larger terms which we confront. What is drama? You all know that drama is, you all know that it is nothing but a composition in prose and verse. And it is composition which is written by an author, by a playwright, and written in a passion of dialogue, where the dialogue is there, then the interaction is there, and the dialogue is later presented by a set of players, presented in a pantomime, and also with the enunciation or the rendering of the dialogue. So a set of players presenting these dialogues with gesture, with enunciation, with other kinds of things, it becomes the acting. It becomes a kind of an acting, and it becomes a kind of a doing. So from the reading to it goes to the doing. But I would like to stick on to my own definition of drama as a text, a unitary text written, selected for performance, a text which is written in the dialogic fashion, selected for a particular performance. But it also includes a story or a narrative involving, or the fabula involving a kind of a conflict. So when A and B speaks, why do you want to read? There is a hidden idea of persuasion. The dialogues makes you to persuade in between. That in-betweenness makes them to go glue into that particular sets of action, and it grows in. That is why the Greek word drawn, the etymological word drawn, mean to do, to act, initiate. From there, the word drama comes in. Drama is in the Aristotelian terms is nothing but an imitated human action. So when you read a drama, it is the reader is initiated into a kind of an imitation to get into an action. So the drama pushes you to a kind of a set, a kind of a stance where you are, some way or the other getting into a kind of an action. So as I said, we can comfortably, when we have a theater, when we talk about the other term theater, we can comfortably fix this particular term drama as a text. And drama is the smallest and the most intense circle. A drama is independent of the people who carry it. And it may be carried between places and times because it is in the textual format. Even people who perform of drama do not comprehend it. The drama remains preserved as a text. From the drama, when it gets into the array of performances, in between you can call it as a script. Script is that all that can be transmitted between spaces. Between spaces or places and times. The script is the code of events, and it is transmitted between people. It is transmitter must know how the script needs to be taught, or how the script needs to be taught to the others. So this is what the transmitter should know. So the transmitter of the script gives us an idea of the ashan, master, or the director, or the manager, or the dramaturg, or the guru, and the presence of a man who makes the codes to be into a particular kind of action. So that is the drama. When it comes into the stage of the script itself, gives us an indication that it should be to be performed, to be done. So, but drama has made a large amount of dramatic literature, so that you're all familiar with. And it also funnily has the periodization of ancient drama, medieval drama, modern drama, and things like that. Or it can get into a kind of a periodization of Elizabethan, Jacobean, Victorian, and so on, and so. And even we can have that thing. Also, you can make another periodization of Indian drama, American drama, French drama, or Greek drama, or whatever it is, and minuscule periodizations, and similarly many things. So the drama is in a broader way, we have to think in terms of as a text which always initiate us to do an action. So that comes the word, the theater. Theater is nothing but the drama into action. Otherwise, theater is nothing but a word which has a root in the Greek word theatron, which is nothing but a seeing place. It's a seeing play. So it denotes a kind of a dramatic presentation. Some presentation in a play is happening, then it becomes theatre. A presentation or a verbal declamation has happened, an enunciation with verbality happened with a certain set of players, then it becomes a theatre. So the building or a part of the building is used by the actors for enacting the text written for enactment. So here, when it comes to the theatre, it gives you an idea of author, actors, and acting, and a set of audience. So there is a tripartite structure. You can think in terms of an author, actor, audience, author reaching. There is an enactment at a specific place in a specific time and a specific spatial adjustment. So the dramatic works, when it gets into the theater, is nothing but as a collectively. Also considered as a theater. It's like dramatic works, when it is considered collectively, you can call it as theater. Like that is why we say that Indian theater, a set of dramatic works in the different Indian languages collected together into a performance. It can become Indian theater. It can become French theater, or it can go minute into theater of the Ibsen, the plays, dramatic works written by Ibsen's, which is presented over a period of time by different groups. So, but interestingly, the communication between the author to the actor to the audience is mediated by the HR or the director, or mediated by the space, the theatron, or the theatrical space. It can be different kinds of stages, maybe a proscenium stage, maybe the theater of the arena, maybe a circular stage, maybe a semi-theatron, or whatever it is, a proscenium sandwich stage, or whatever it is, theater in the round, or whatever. It's mediated. So it is mediated and the action happens. So theater is always gives an indication that theater is an event that is enacted by the performers. This is what the performers do during the production. When the production is happening, the enactment is happening, it can be, you can add a word, that production. And the theater is a concrete, present and immediate. It is then and there. It has that ephemeral quality of the presence. So it has a set of actors in that moment of a time living amidst you and make you to read it through your own intellect as well as your own sensations. So you are making two kinds of reading. Reading of the text, reading through the Shruti, and reading through the Smriti also. That Shruti makes you connected into the Smriti, where you connect and connect the meanings. And this will work out into a set of visuals which comprehend and makes it as a total theater, makes you to concretize certain kinds of meanings. That is why all this articulation, the drama, or the theater always makes a kind of a manifestation of the drama through articulation and concretization. So you get a holistic meaning of the particular word. So then comes the interesting word, it's a performance. Performance is a larger word. It's a larger concept. It's an umbrella concept. It's a whole constellation of events that take place in and among the performers, where you can see the performers performs in a space for an audience, and the audience interact, and many things happen. There is an action, reaction, and interaction happens as a constellation of event. And this encompassing, this inclusive containing of which is not determined by the script of the dancer. When it comes to the performance, a script is not a dictating factor. It happens many things. You cannot say that because of this script it happened. It is like that. So interestingly, performance has two, in the Shakespearean term, the performance has two things. One side of it is a play. Play is nothing but an activity. Plays can be called as a game. Play can be called as an entertainment. So it has that entertainment affective dyad. And one side it is the ritual. Ritual is nothing but the repeated actions of precise action, which deals with the concretization and the sacredness and whatever it is. So it's an in between. in between of the play and ritual, the performance happens. Interestingly, the performance, makes you to, as I said, it's an inclusive term, it's a larger term, it includes many things. So in that way, when we look at that performance term, you can see 5 major categories to understand the term performance. First is, performance is nothing but the presenting something which is pre-prepared before an audience, that I have already said. It can be theater, music, dance, circus, whatever. But the liveness, the immediacy, that is the matter, the liveness of the thing, the presence of the performer. So performance, and slowly performance becomes a genre of itself. That is why we have performance art, we have independent performance as an activity, we have a protest as a performance, we have packaged performances, so many things. So it is nothing but the presenting. That is one of the meaning. But the performance is also studied by the anthropologists, by the cultural theorists, by the performatologists, by the theater practitioners, and so on. So that is why once they started studying it, when the sociologists and anthropologists started coming in, they have made performance as a social behavior. So then the Goffmanian concept of everyday life as a performance comes in. Everyday life, everybody, this is a ritual. There is a ritual, there is a repetitive or restored behavior is happening. So in our life, the early morning, we all start with, nowadays in the corona makes us to drink some hot water. But earlier it may be a brushing of the teeth. But it is a kind of a continuous ritualistic repeated behavior, a pattern, a ritual, which is repeated every day. So that is why Schechner says that performance is a twice behaved behavior. So because unconsciously we are framing certain steps of actions and frame it and repeat it. So, and when the conscious is put in, we try to prefer, I am being a man, trying to doing something, doing a ritual of my own every day, and trying to make it showy. Then it becomes a showing of something. So our twice behaved behavior becomes standardized for some kind of showing. That is why many of the actors, when they use smaller things in the stage or in the screen, you can see how better they perform. You can see the way Shah Rukh Khan runs better than many of the people. You can see the Mastilo Mastriani smokes a cigar. You can see Daniel Day-Lewis looks at it. You can see our own Denzel Washington walks so beautifully and maintain the action. So it's something like when you get into a kind of a showing doing business, you culture your performance abilities, you culture your behavior, to a certain kind of a level which cut across the aesthetics and which cut across the limits of the social observations of the performance act. So there the performance becomes a kind of a metaphor which helps the actor to portray the particular kind of situations. So behavior is always like that, So it is something like, it is always like behavior always makes the performance studies much more complex because one have to study the behavior. Okay, then comes the performance, the concepts, another idea is performance as a success or achievement. You know all that. You have a performance to do that. You know that Zoom performs better than the Google Meet. That is why, many of the people prefer Zoom. Or you know that the Apple has an aesthetic performance better than, or the other thing, or whatever it is. So it is like the performance is always there in technology also. Performance is also there in the concept of in arts, in sports, in technology, in business, in sex, in the play, in the ritual. So the performance of different kinds can be seen in this thing. So, but people can say that, as I said, performance is there in the everyday life. It is also there in the arts. It is also there in the sports. It is also there in the business. It is also there in the technology. It is also there in the sex. It is also there in the ritual. It is also there in the play. So you can say, what is the success? The success of the economy, success of the machine, success of the Cochin Metro, success of the, how do Cochin Metro perform? So here all these things connects us to the idea of performed, otherwise, perform or else. John Mackenzie's idea of, if you're not performing, you're not going to, make your own success or whatever it is. There is an efficacy kinds of understanding of the performance. Performance also can become a performance art, a particular art genre, where, the body art, liveness, presence and embodiment associated with the person, with the first, that is why it becomes a body art, where you can see the endurance artist, where you can see the tattoo artist, where you can see the people like Roger Blinn, who is hanging from the New York Imperial Tower. You can see so many kinds of, or you can see the master performance artist or the Maria Abramovich. She takes the events, make the performance arts, and package it and makes it as a bigger thing. So that is one kind of a looking at the performance. Otherwise, you can see the deconstructive performance, which happens is a development in the genre of theater. Theater is not like the theater which is an illusionistic theater where you go to have some kind of an aesthetic pleasure. Now, theater becomes a constellation of events, constellation of things which can make protest, constellation of things which can makes you participate, constellation of things which you can in fact hurt you. So theater has changed its dimensions of illusionistic stage realities to certain kinds of realities and facts where your sensations are affected, tweaked, and done it. It has not happened in the recently. It had a history from the naturalistic presentations to the presentational styles, Dada, Futurism, Expressionism, postmodern performances to post-humanist, post-theater, post-dramatic performances, and so on and so forth. So there are quite a lot of, cutting across the thing is there. So as I said, the performance, now we can understand that the dimension of the performance in its definition itself is so humongous, so large. So in the Schneerian words, he says something is performance and something can be considered as performance or season. The agricultural starts with certain kinds of performance, especially from the Trivandrum. In the agricultural, there's an idea of the Mudipuras coming. Then the performance of the time. The harvesting time has n number of performances. So religious connotations, religious time, religious calendar, and the local vernacular calendars bring in a set of the performances to begin with. That is why we have Vishu to look back and Onam to look forward. So it is something like, the future is looked through the Onam and Vishu to look back and thank. So, we connect our ears with that kind of an aspirations of the time. And interestingly, both the Onam and Vishu was, clustered with set of performances classified as cultural performances for us. So, and interestingly, the other aspect of the cultural performance is the structure. Many of the cultural performance has its own generic structure, which has conventions. And of course, these conventions are later, part of the inventions, and the conventions and inventions comes together, and creatively people reproduce. That is why many of the performances are becoming dynamic in its nature. And interestingly, all the cultural performances goes through the three phases. That is the pre-performance phases where we set up things, set up the paddy field, set up the, sacrifice, the sacrality of the particular space and the lightning of the things and certain kinds of practices of preparing 40 days of Lent before getting into a Theyyam and things like that happen. So like a lot of preparation goes into the pre-performance phase. And then the performance that is clustered, that is stage-wise progressing, that is something very much similar to a kind of a rites of passage. It will have a birth, naming, and the growth, and it will change, and it will get into a kind of a festive reason, then it will slowly wither away and cool off. So the performance has a kind of a cyclical structure where it starts and gear the action, gets into the climax and pacifies and fill the lacunae, and the lacunas gets liquidated with the offerings, with the sharing of the food, and things like that, like that, like that. And we get into the post-performance. So there is a post-performance. Post-performance is the cleaning up. Post-performance is nothing but the actors or the performer coming out of the thing. When you consider the Theyyam performance, you can see that the god is coming out of the of his own character, his own role. A performer becoming a Deyyam or a Devam and comes out by removing one band Y and going as the Devam, going as the human being, go around as part of the Tendaka and, collect the alms and everything, blesses people. So it is an interesting way of cooling off, though that happens in the three phases. Interestingly, the cultural performance also have a lot of content, cultural content associated with it. That is why many of our cultural performances connects with our own Puranas, epics and mythologies and things like that. So that is why we can see many Ramayanas performed in different places. We can see many kinds of epic characters portrayed with their own interventions and their own interpretations at different parts of the country, So that is kind of a cultural content goes with of our performances. So it is an interesting way to look at. And interestingly, most of this performance, content-wise and structure-wise, proclaims that idea of the community to which it is belonging to. So many of the communities possess performance as their hereditary identity. So that performance, through that performance, they say that we are together, we are a solidarity community, we have our own margins, our own borders, because that performance says it so. So every community make themselves visible for the others through certain kinds of cultural performance. And in the due course of time, as in the Milton Sinner's worldview, cultural performance has undergone as a kind of a lot of changes. It has undergone many kinds of changes. It becomes a scheduled event. Like you see the idea of the Sabha, Madras, Chennai Sabha. You can see that it's a set of scheduled events, highly formulaic in nature, highly formulaic, highly specific, and highly formulaic and classical performance. A cluster of classical performance comes in, and lots of specialists plays a role. It's not the simple people. It is a specialist in that particular genre comes in for the performance. So there is a lot of conventions associated with that classical music genres, with the accomplished traditional or accomplished folk or accomplished community performers who has mastered a particular kinds of language for themselves. So it is cultural performances are nothing but of the community, for the community, by the community. It's highly democratic in that nature. Forget about the feudality associated with it. Forget about the hierarchy associated with it. Forget about the power relations associated with it. But it is in a unique sense, it is highly democratic and in nature. But interestingly, in the due course of time, the cultural performance becomes events where the communication happens for the communities, and it has been scaled through the media. So many of the performances got mediatized, and that like the talk which we do. Now the talk is happening live in a presence with an unknown audience by me, and it has been mediatized and listened by somebody which is an unknown audience to me. And it's also seen by someone else, onlookers, viewers. So it's very interesting. So it's a very interesting reality where the performance have gone in. Cultural performance has also gone in with that kind of a mediatization. That is why the Tyagaraja Aradhana happens in one part of the world, and it is simultaneously happens in Chicago and the bigger screens are placed. And earlier days, Kundukudi Vaidyanathan is performing and he's seen live in an uneven time in Chicago in a temple. So it's a very interesting realities which we are living. So it is like the performance cut across certain kinds of thing. So why this performance has this much of diversity? Because it has different kinds of functions. When we look at the functions, you can see 7 important functions. It may be more, but 7 important functions as per the Shishunarian idea. That is nothing but, you all know that all the performances are aimed at entertaining. So the entertaining is the bigger, larger function. Then many of the performance heal. From the entertainment to heal. If you see a film by Maria Abramovich on the Amazon, Amazon forest, you can watch how healing arts have helped her to heal herself. And when she curates it and put it into a museum in the Los Angeles, that museum gives you an act of healing with the representations of the Amazon. That's a very interesting way of repackaging it. So the performance has that kind of healing capacity. It also fosters the identity. You know that many of the political performances, the anti-CAA protest and all, makes you to come together. And we Keralites are very much famous for building the bigger walls, handheld walls, human walls, with serpentine lines of people. So we make a larger amount of performances to show our own solidarity and the foster the identity. Many of the performers try to teach us, try to persuade us, try to make us change us. So that is why, like, many of the propagandist performances always deal with an idea of teaching, a pedagogic teaching, implementing certain kinds of the ideas propagated always by the powerful. Whatever it is, you can think in terms of that. And that is one of the particular functions. And many of the Indian performances, interestingly, deal with the divine and deal with the Dhamma. So you have a set of performances where, you don't need to worry about the black arts, but, many of the performances deal with the divine. And always divine and devil comes, 2 parts of the coin. So it comes together. So it's that way. And many of our artistic performers create beauty through our crafts. Many of them performances, especially the performances of our initiation ceremonies, birth ceremonies, ear-pouring ceremonies, puberty ceremonies, will try to change our identity. So the performances acts. So that is where the Jainostian concept of the performatives comes in. A performative utterances can change your identity. A priest's utterance of you become man and woman, change your identity as wife and husband. So that kind of a possibility performances open. So the performances opens this kinds of a larger possibility of the thing. And it also when you come in, when you closely look at the performances, you can, if you look at from the point of view of the actor or the performance, you can see being myself, started doing certain things and started showing certain things, doing certain things. In the traditional performances, it is conventional, it is tailor-made, it is learned with the difficulties, it is learned over a period of time to master it, then showing as a repeated behavior. Then it is our own profession. Some of the performers consider that as their own professions and they become only live in. That is why, interestingly, you can see that some of the performers are the living legends of our own generations. Suppose you take the case of the Amanur Madhav Chakyari. He is a living repository of knowledge of Kuriya. Or you can consider the performer who plays the role of the Narada for more than 62 years in the Ramalila. Is nothing but he has lost his own identity of the name of the Mahan, then he became Narada himself. So it has completely transferred his identity to become a Narada. So it is like an interesting way of transformation happens in the performances. What happens in this larger way of doing it? Me, myself, and I become the other. So it is the self plays a role and get into the other. Other is nothing but the character. And the character, the idea of adjusting and manipulating, maneuvering this character makes you to a star, and then you can't come out. You have to be inside the room. You have to be quarantined. So stars are the best people who has already learned how to quarantine themselves. So that is the phenomena which happens. I think I have taken considerably larger amount of time in this first part of the show, where I was trying to, give you a broader idea of how the concepts like drama, theater, and performance manner. But interestingly, what happened? Theater also got changed. Theater also continued. It is a dynamic thing. It was not like the thing which has happened anyway. Yesterday in the Greece, in the Acropolis, they have restaged the performance for a set of audience. So in the coronavirus, after the coronavirus impact, the Greece started their tourist show of the drama, a tragedy. So that is a very interesting way of looking at it. So the theater has changed a long time. So if you think that theater has changed and it become a performance packaged thing, then you can look at the two things. So like, suppose I say theater has a linearity, or the fabula has a narrative continuity. Performance is as a simultaneity. It brings in a set of acts together, episodes together, and it happens at the multiple times, in a similar time at the multiple venues. So it happens. And the theater has a character. Character is worked with many kinds of traits. Who am I? Where am I? What am I? And when and why? An actor always thinks, who am I? What am I? How my behaviors are cultured to suit the character whom I wanted to portray. So that kind of a thing comes in. But in the case of the performance, it's nothing but the autobiography of the performer which works. The skill of the performer, the chronological development of the performer, the capacity of the performer. If you see a performance of a Cirque du Soleil, many of the performers you don't know. Many of the circus actors you don't know, but you will be wondering at their skills. When you check up their own skills, when you look at their own autobiography, their own upbringing, their own skill development, their own, it's something like that. So the performance deals with not with the characters, but with the autobiographies of or the skills of the acting. The character and the theater deals with the acting, but the performance deals with the authenticity of the performance. How authentic, how alive, how immediate, how capacitated that act is. An act of endurance. That is the authentic act, not the falsified act of make-believe in acting. So it is becoming like that. It is, if theater for an actor or for a director, for a spectator, theater may be an invention in the illusion reality. But performance is nothing but a revelation. It's kind of a revelation. It touches you. It tickles your senses. It makes you to prompt. It will make you to carry certain things. That is why the present performances or the present theatrical presentations of Ottomerer or the Roberto Castellucci and things like that, gives you not only shock value, but also to take certain things home. Takes certain things home to, it's a kind of a revelation. It kinds of certain things which you never make. So that is why the theater has the potency and the performance have the impotency. So it is that way we have to really think in terms of this. So in a way, when we look at the drama theater performance, there are three major terms. We can think that there are certain things, certain terms, certain triangles happens together. That in short, I wanted to say it is the author, actor, audience, or it is the play, players, and playgoers, or it is the space. If I think in terms of the designer think space as the beginning, not as a text. It's a space, then the actor's body, then the audience body. Everything is connected with the kind of a materiality with signs and meanings, which connects and construct a kind of a performance. So otherwise, it is nothing but an act, and the act becomes kind of an event, and the event gets transformations of multiple kinds of transformations through its mediatization, and its simultaneous occurrences. So, performance tradition. Before going into the Christian performance tradition, in which a Moovarasu Nadagam is taken. Moovarasu Nadagam is nothing but the Maggie play. Moved three Arasus, three kings. Three kings are nothing but the characters. As you know, it's a biblical characters. The three kings who visited the Manga of Jesus Christ. So it is a larger amount of a Christian tradition. So that has been portrayed in the Christianity by a particular one-year community of Palakkad. And it's an annual performance. It's a very ritualistic performance. It is part of the Epiphany celebrations in a particular church. So before going into that, I have to really look at what kind of how these Christian performance traditions got constructed. So interestingly, the Christian performance tradition of Kerala can be seen in in multiple layers. So where you can see one amount of semi-theatrical performances, where you can see Margam Kali, Parisamuttakali, Vattakali, and things like that. This is all are semi-theatrical in nature, which all are simpler part two or storytelling performances. Most of them are, legendaric in nature, in the sense they bring in the mythology and the legendaric, and nowadays a little bit of social themes. But most of them are very much homogeneous, pertinent to the communities, and it is simpler dance traditions with songs. So orality plays a major role in this particular kind of performances. So that is the semi-theatrical performances of Christian tradition. So this semi-theater, earlier said that semi-theatrical performances are dates back to a particular kind of a time, even though it is not a good way of telling. We can consider it as an ancient traditions or earlier traditions of the heritage. Traditions counts with the heritage or whatever it is. So that is that. But in the medieval phase of the Christianity, you can see certain traditions like Chauta Nadagam, there's a foot stamping dance drama, then there's a Moorish Nadagan, the Maggie play, and there's a Pascha, which is the medieval phase of the Christianity. So where you can see that in the medieval phase it comes in. It is mostly the dance dramas with the music. So it blends the superimposed Western themes with the local codes and formulas. So it's a very interesting blend of this particular thing comes in. And in due course of time, and the time passes, it has gone into different stages, and it became, in the organized cultural festivals, and now it is interestingly part of the youth festival. Now it's like, the Chautanadagam, which used to be performing for 14 long days, is now part of a 20-minute mini school performance. And also it became a kind of a Latin Christian antiquity of Kerala. So it also started featuring in the films which portrayed the Latin Christian life. So you might be familiar with some of the films which has brought in Chautanadagam performances. Anyway, so that is a particular thing. So this is like, in the second phase, that is the medieval phase, where the feudality started playing a role. There you can see theatrical performances. It is not like a semi-theatrical. It is theatrical in the sense it used to fuse dance, drama, music, and movement, and everything together, and the various performance codes together in portraying the particular theme. And the theme is nothing but a theme became complex and episodic, unlike the simpler themes in the earlier semi-dance forms, and it becomes an episodic and structural patterns. The narratives has a kind of a, you can say it's a pyramidal structure. You can call it as a structure with the initiation, rising the action, climax, crisis, and falling the action, or whatever structure. The structure of what is that? A German scholar, that pyramidal structure. He follows that structural thing you can see, and you can always see the lack liquidation formula because of the hero has a lack, and the hero wanted to get that lack to be liquidated through his own encounters with the evil. So we will have a hope of the hero survives the villain's deeds, and hope of the goodwill, good have the victory over the evil, or whatever it is. It is most of this theatrical performances are a kind of representational, stylized, and formulaic, and that is why I call it mostly them are theatrical in nature. Interestingly, the earlier semi-theatrical performances like Margankali, which is particularly, which is very much associated with the Kananaya community, was homogeneous in very much net or monovocal, one voice. It was one voice. It was the identity intact of that particular band level homogenized community where they will have a semicircular. The circular dance itself shows the community is small, they are together, they have a solidarity, they have a belief, and they represent themselves. So that's what this particular thing happens. But when it comes to the theatrical performances, you can see the performances are episodic. Performances have a linear narrative with a continuous correspondence of action. One episode's progress into another focus into another, and it is something like that. So it goes that. So it becomes polyvocal. Why it becomes polyvocal? Because the idea is superimposed. The stories are superimposed from the West. The stories have an idea of proselytization, the propaganda of Christianity in a different landscape, and it is also fused with a particular kind of conventions and codes of the South Indian dramatic tradition. So it is a mellifluous blend of that thing. So it is that way. So in the earlier tradition, it was a blending of ethnic culture ethos was very simpler, monovocal, and mostly it has shown the solidarity. But in the second stage of theatrical tradition, you can see the superimposition, you can see the polyvocal, you can see a lot of contestations develops in this, and then you can see the third level. There is a modern, you can conveniently call it as modern or present, where there are a lot of biblical themes are coming into the genres like theater. Theaters are nothing but the groups there. Theaters are the groups or the spaces. There, you can see the commerce and the customized performances started coming in. Dialogue dramas, generic plays. It can be Sangeeta Nadagam. It can be anything. It comes in. So it is survived through the space. That is why you can see a lot of theater companies like Kollam Azizi, Cochin Carmel Theatres, and other theatres exclusively performs Christian drama or the themes in Christian dramas. So this is seen in the professional Kerala drama, professional Malayalam drama stage, as well as in the amateur drama stage. So a number of plays which is written based on the themes presented in the proscenium format for a unilinear communication. And it happens. So I'm not getting into that particular things. Instead, I am going into a particular phase of theatrical traditions. That is what it is. As I said, the theatrical tradition, you have Chauta Nadagam. This is a Darbar scene where you can see. It's better that I should have shown you a particular video, but we don't have much time. But it's interesting to show that Chauta Nadagam mellifluously blends the things like that. Okay, anyway, I'll come into the Movers Nadagam, or the Maggie play, where the Balthasar, the first king, the king of the Maggie, in a makeup room, he meets. Interestingly, this drama, the three kings comes from the three parts of Palakkad, Attikod. So the space is divided between two places. One is the exterior of the church. Another is the interior of the church compound. In the interior of the church compound, there is a permanent stage. There is a cathedral, a church building. So both are used. In the exterior, it is the road and it is the three designated spaces. So from the three designated spaces, three kings comes in a bullock cart with processions. They are in search of the Savior. So that is the way it comes in. And they comes into the church compound where they confront the King Herod. King Herod. This is the way the second king is on the way. Melchior is on the way, coming in a bullock cart, it's the first procession. So the performance starts with the first procession of the kings comes from three areas simultaneously starts. So three parts of the region, the procession starts at the correct time, and they come as processions in the three parts. So everywhere the Magi meets, so the kings meets in the compound where, they exchange, they're singing, they exchange, and they understand. They tell that they have come to see the newly born king. That is nothing but the infant Jesus Christ. So they have this is the Balthasar talking, and the proclamation scene happens along. So meanwhile, you can see Herod, the king, is waiting for what is happening, getting disturbed by the sounds and all, and he is waiting in the stage, that is his darbar, where he sends his minister and asking what is happening where there. So the minister goes, inquire, and then realize, then go back and report back to Herod, and the Herod is asking them to come into the darbar. And there is another procession where the whole group, along with the audience, all of them come together, go in a procession to the stage, and the performance happens. The next stage happens in the stage. Interestingly, here the Herod is a Hindu pagan king. Herod is portrayed as a Hindu king who believes in the Hindu Shastras and Puranas and things like that. So it's a very interesting way of portrayal in this particular thing. As the minister comes in, talks to them in the compound and takes the lead. And this is the procession which I say the Magi goes in a procession along with the retinue to the stage and where they meet. In between, and that after the procession, there is a break. There the Satans comes in, the pace comes in. A set of people belongs to the Lucifer thing. The Satans comes in, and they will already inform King Herod that these people are trying to cheat you. They are not, it's something like that. So they are, whatever they are telling is a false. So it is that way trying to disappear from that. So the Satan comes in the next sequence. There are a couple of sequences happens where the Magi discuss their things with the King Herod, where most of the discussion happens with whose God is better. King Herod and Magi try to, convince King Herod that whatever he believes is wrong. Whatever gods he believes is nothing but animals. So things like that. The text goes in a particular kind of a way, and the interaction goes. So, and the Magi says, the King Herod, if you want, you can check with your own soothsayers, your own astrologer, your own thing, that there is a king born. And then comes the scene of the astrologers comes in. Astrologers are interesting people. They are soothsayers. They are papan, called by the community. And the Magi confront them and expose how faltu, how bad, how non-knowledge all these people, how superstitious their beliefs are. So that is what happens in the scene of the confrontation of Magi with the Papa and what the soothsayer. Then comes the Magi ask is to talk to King Herod to bring in the priest, and the priest comes in. Priest comes in to cross-check, and the priest of the church or the priest comes in and proclaim, yes, whatever the Magi is telling is truth, and the king is born. After that, the scene changes. The scene changes into a particular Tevaram sequence where the Magi kneel down, and the ideals of the Magi comes from the church, and they will handle that this thing. Every one of the audience sings together. That's the largest scene, largest sequence where the audience, the performers, and all those people sing together. And sometimes they get into a kind of a possession and a trance and things like that. From there, the Magi with the ideals in the hands goes as a procession to the church inside. And they go inside the church, and there is a manger. There is already a manger is there. Before the manger, they prostrate, they remove their headgear, and they submit their votive offerings before the Jesus Christ. And interestingly, they takes the Jesus Christ in a teru, in a pulkur, whatever it is. And there is a grand procession happens outside the church. So outside the church, and the procession comes in and gets into the interiors of the church, and the Holy Mass happens. So by the time the performance ends with the Holy Mass, it will become the 7 o'clock in the morning. So it started at the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the night, and it goes to a kind of a 10 to 12 hours of the next day. So the entire performance is a larger chunk of episodes connected with many things, connected with a set of vakyas, singing, a set of this thing, singing, and very interestingly led with singing, dancing, proclamations, and scenes, and in between, interestingly, the audience gets onto the stage and pay their offering. They try to wash their hands, wash the legs of the Maggie. They try to kiss the Maggie. They get the blessing from the Maggie. They even get the blessing from the Hindu king Herod. So it is very interesting way of looking at that particular performance. So that is why I categorize that particular performance as something like it's a core category. So when you look at the performance tradition in large, where you can see performers reach the audience through the performance text, where it is the ritual practice of the performers. Performers' ritual practice gets into a kind of a religious event, and it is a social obligation of the performers and which proclaim their Christian religious ideology. The same way, the audience social obligation. The performance should happen. The performance should happen annually, once in a year. It's an obligation by the audience, and that social obligation gets realized in a religious event, seasonal, once in a year, and they also practice their ritual practice, because in the different stages of the performance, one can see the audience interact, give offering. They have different kinds of offerings at different stages, during the processions, during the preparations, during the act, during the last scene, during the last performance, and so on. So that all proclaims their religious identity. So it is like a core category where a religious event and a ritual practice proclaims through a religious ideology, proclaims through a kind of social obligation. So it is all intact. It is all very much close. That is why the transformation or the changes are not happening much to this particular performance. That is why this is the same thing with a Muslim performance called Kutirati. Kutirati is performed by the Shiite community, and it won't change. It is more ritualistic. It is performed by hereditary players, hereditary performers. They have taken the role. Same thing as in the Muvarashan Nadagam. A set of performers takes the role, has a hereditary right to perform Balthasar, perform Malkio, even perform the King Herod. Same way in the Kutirati Orwell. So most of these audience are very much internal audience. They are very much internal. And most of the performance has a lot of attribution to the sacrality of this thing. So the performer and the partaker becomes one. That happens in the many of the Theyyam performers. Where the Theyyam performers, there's a Deyyam or the Devam. Devam is confronting the Bhakta, and the Bhakta and Devam becomes once in some part of the performances where they get the blessing from the Devam. So once it becomes the performer and the audience, the dimensions of the Theyyams has got transformed. That is why happening it is. The dimensions have transformed when the Deyyam or the Theyyam, the god, become just a mere performer with a set of skills. And the audience are not the devotees, not kind of an overistic audience. And most of them were only interested in capturing that particular spectacle of the Theyyam through their mobile phones or cameras. And that is what is happening. The cruelest thing has happened by a Theyyam in the last 2 years, 1.5 years before. A Theyyam got hunted down by a set of camera-laden photographers, like that made that Theyyam to perform certain acts. It was a Bapirian Theyyam by Suresh Peruvanan, because of the larger amount of the cameras looking at him, made him to do such a spectacular act of making a somersault at the top of the coconut tree. What happened is fall down from the coconut tree and fall onto the melody. And interestingly, but the interesting connotations happened. Theyyam being a very dynamic art, what happened was the spectators or the groups in the WhatsApp groups has taken care of the performer, Suresh Peruvanan. There is a WhatsApp group which has sponsored, taken the Suresh Peruvanan, put him in the Mangalore, made him, and also they bought him artificial crutches from Germany. They have also bought him auto rickshaw for his survival. And interestingly, they have pushed him and made him to come back in this season. But the corona never made him to come back and perform in this season. But it's something like, that is what the dynamism of many of these performances cutting across. We cut across the boundaries because the performers meet the audience. Active performers meet the audience through the performance text and becomes one and make a very univocal sound. That is nothing but the Bhaktian terms of organic hybridity. That is nothing but the organic hybridity where it is unintentional and unconscious. It's a mellifluous blend. There is the mixing and fusion of the theme and the conventions happen, and it becomes performance become mute and opaque. There is no conscious contrast. In the case of Moovarsu Nadagam, you can see, even though Herod is portrayed as a Hindu king, people go to Herod and also get blessing. And you can even see, interestingly, that they are being Christian, they are being phonetically Christian. They are going to the Herod, who is portraying as a Hindu king, who is a loser, but he is blessing the thing. So that's kind of an inappropriateness is being, nullified in the performance context of Moovarsu Nadagam. So there is no conscious contrast are seen in the organic hybrids like this particular thing. So that is why the organic hybridity comes into the theoretical thing. That is why when you if you look at it from the post-colonial perspectives also, you can see Moovarsu Nadagam, the unconscious part of the Epiphany celebration and the context of celebration blend that performance. The Epiphany is the story of the three kings' visitation of Jesus Christ. And it is that part goes with the story. And it is the unintentional implantation of the text as part of the ritual in this event. So the ritual is integrated into the event. And the geographical and the contextual adaptation of the text through the performance course, where you can see, you always see the Maggie comes with the camel, because in the European tradition, it is believed that they are come from the Arab world of Sabah and the different parts of the Arabia, Persia, Sabah, and Malaysia. So it is that way. But here, it is the Maggie comes in the bullock carts. That are a one-year community, one-year Latin Christian community is an agricultural community. So for them, the bullock carts decorated through the agricultural producers, and they come in. So that kind of a cultural, contextual appropriation makes this particular performance native in adaptation, and it gets amalgamated into their cultural belief systems through the portrayal of Herod, through the portrayal of Papan, through the portrayal of Satan, and the devotee gets into a kind of a trance at a particular moment of time, because she or he, an active devotee, gets into a particular kind of trance. So this is what happens in the particular thing. So, but in the case of the peripheral performances like Chauta Nadagam, I will stop it. So where you can see there is a conventional text which is written text, that needs to become a performance text, and the performers makes that conventional text into performance text, and it is met at the audience. And interestingly, the performers meet the audience through the sponsor or the patron. It is the church, or it is the group, it is the finance society, or it is the cultural festival, or it is the government patronage, which makes that performers to do a performance of Charlemagne for the set of audience. And it is the performance go through a particular Chautanadagam genre. There is a generic that has a mudras, that has a chudis, that has a set of rendering, that has a step of stages. It's all start with start with a Balapatugar, to a kind of Angakuri, to a kind of a Darbar scene, to a kind of a hunting scene, to a kind of a climactic scene, to a kind of a, and ends up with a Mangala. So it has a genre of its own, with codified mudras, codified footsteps, and things like that, and they construct particular performance text. And the performance text is happening in a context. That cultural context can be an Independence Day celebration, can be a church festival, can be a finance show, can be a Chautanadagam festival, can be a Musri's Binale, Cochin Binale. So can be anything. So that kind of a cultural context makes it proper. So it is some of these performances like Chautanadagam becomes something like intentional. It becomes an intentionally performed. It's an hybrid where there is a superimposition of the Western themes. The Charlemagne legends of the Europe is intentionally brought in and blended with the South Indian performance scope. So that is why it will have an inorganic cultural hybridity. So it's an inorganic hybridity where, many of the time the internal dialogic hybridity happens. The internal contrast happens. The theme, as I said, the theme contrasts with the codes, and the theme and the codes are very much visible. The sacred is contrasted with the secular, and that division and separation is clearly seen. And interestingly, the simultaneous presence of the dominant ideology of the Christianity is the impending thing. So that is why it is intentional. So in the Bakhtinian concepts of the organic hybridity and the inorganic hybridity, or the unintentional unconscious hybridity, or the intentional or the conscious hybridity can be seen in this particular performance traditions, if you take these two as an example. And what happens of late, the hybridity constructs its own hybrid text. That is why you can see many kinds of particular. So, okay, so let me take the third part of my story. Third part of my story is nothing but the reading theater. So how can we read a theater? So how can we read a theater as a kind of as a reader, or as a participant, or reading theater as a director or a dramaturg? That is what one of the experience. I think you are all familiar with a particular kind of a text called Little Prince. I think many of you will be familiar with this particular kind of a text. So once again, I will on my video. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's fine. So the Realty Prince is a text which is written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It talks about the story of a flight crash, and the pilot is meeting a smaller man. He is nothing but a prince of another planet. So why I selected this particular story is because the Mars is very much closer to us. Mars is coming to us, and India is making an attempt to reach Mars. And the US have already reached Mars in its 3 phases, and China is also trying to reach Mars. So it's like that really made me to think in terms of the Little Prince who has traveled to the different from his galaxy to different kinds of galaxies. But interestingly, Saint-Exupéry tells this story of the Little Prince through the life and times of one small guy in different parts of his life. That is what it's saying. And the story starts with an interesting note. The note is nothing but that is telling that grown-ups never understand anything by themselves. And it is rather tedious for children to have to explain things to them time and again. So that is it is the struggle of the children to explain why it is like this, why it is like this. So that kind of an innocence it is bringing. So from there is trying to say the story of the Little Prince, and the Little Prince is taken into different things. So initially, what happens when we were working with Christ University English department students, we were introducing this particular thing to them. So we have asked them to make a reading of some of the portions of the text to make it make the fabula to be interesting for them. So what happens is they have made a kind of a performance, all recognizable reading. They have made a kind of a horizontal reading where reading happens between the text to performance, where through a dramaturgical analysis, we are trying to read how this particular text can become dramatized with asking certain kinds of questions of its own. So a dramaturge asks a question, looks at the text to performance, or the literary to the theatrical fact, or the script to the theatrical reality. There is an opportunity for a dramatical analysis before the work is staged. So a dramaturge or the interpreter or the reader try and sit and ask certain kinds of questions to examine the reality represented in the play text, and ask certain questions like, how can the time, the space, and the characters be discussed or described in this text? How it makes an influence? How should the fabula or how should the narrative can be read? How is it read by a spectator, reader, mere reader? How is it read by a director? How is it read by an actor? How is it read by a designer? How is it read by a dramaturge, who helps to conceive the text into a visual or image or things like that? So the multiple kinds of the reading. So how does the play relate to the time when it was written? Even though that opens up the abilities, all the readings, as you know, is not the literal understanding. It is also to the deciphering the meanings encoded in a text, and it is also to interpret the meaning encoded in the text. So the meanings of the text are encoded in the textual writings, and it is being a reader or being a director, being a designer, we're trying to read it. So how does the play relate to the time when it was written? So, but interestingly, when you look at the Little Prince, which is a text translated into as many as languages, cut across many time periods, and become part of the life of many, and become part of the life of a cinema, of a graphic novel, of an interesting amount of stage versions, opera, and things like that. So it has a multimodal translations have happened, and adaptations have happened to this particular text. So it has opened up a larger amount of reading with us. So the next step of the question is, which we ask is, which time it represents, and is it the time it was written? Is it represent the same time, or it can be converted into the present time? So if it can be converted or suitable to the present time, is there a conscious involvement of a designing team comes in, or the director's interpretation comes in, or a scenographer's scenography comes in, or a designer's contribution comes in. All the more, an actor's freedom and interpretation comes in at that particular moment to take up certain options to portray this particular role. And how does the different historical dimensions of this time intervene? So interestingly, this particular novel, which has cut across languages, regions, and time, has its own universal quality to continue its presence. So that is what really made us getting into this this particular play. So the dramatical analysis of any of the texts goes beyond the semiological descriptions of the stage systems. It is not that. It's not only the semiology, but it will ask the question of what the spectators will get out of this performance. When the spectators are in what kind of what will be the result? Will it be functionally entertained? Will it be functionally healing them? Will it be functionally helping them to decode and understand things? Will it be making? So that makes us to implement this play with the social welfare students in their 15 days camp. Interestingly, that was a very interesting, successful show. So where we have interpreted, we are worked with the text with a set of children who are from the social welfare schools and the tribal welfare schools. It's a gang of 300 children, and from there, some of the children were taken. Larger amount of where we have 9 little princes are there. It's not one little prince. 9 little princes. Each one plays each. So because the acts were large amount of acts, we have curtailed it into 12 acts, 12 episodes, where 9 little princes comes in. So interestingly, and each little princess uses his own options. Only one signature, one garland, and one similarity of the sign of the costume made the little princess to continue this show. So that was an interesting experience, because our aim was to empower the participants to understand a non-dramatical text. A text written as a fabula, a text written as an episodic narrative, to conceive it with the dialogues, with the action, and make it much more dramatical, and make it much more theatrical to communicate their own pleasure. So they used to take their own interesting options of statuses while playing as a particular. So that particular process has really made us to understand that these children can improvise, construct their dialogues by from the titter-patter narrations of the event by us. So they have improvised their dialogues. They have conceived their dialogues. Only the design, dramaturgical creativity has only brought it, because it needs to be presented. So the audience expectations of watching that particular reading or staging of the play, non-dramatic text, made us to conceive it like that. Though that is why it happens. The dramaturgical analysis always think in terms of what is the spectator's attitude and what is the spectator's what will be the spectator gets out of it, and how it relates to the audience in its ideological and aesthetic frame. So being the larger amount of audience comes from the Soros families, how do they relate with their own children? How do they relate with their own attitudes? How do they relate with their own situations? So that was the major things which we made. But when we were reading it in the Christ University, there was the students we were making the reading because they are into literature. We were making much of the horizontal reading, where thinking in terms of how the text can become a performance. Looking at the linear structure and kind of a syntagmatic reading, how the episodes can be connected using a kind of a intermittent sutradhara or whatever it is, and how dramatic construction is possible with this kinds of text, and how the presentation of the fabula can be devised with available material, available costume, like the present day many of the people are doing theater from the home and within their limitation, within their improvised costume, and all are nothing but monologues rendered by the actors. So they work on the text, they work on the rendering, they work on the enunciation, they work on the options, and work on the linguistic possibilities of making the communication, declamation possible. So here, so here in the horizontal reading, or the drama in space with its elements through the line of action, was very much important with it. So, but horizontal reading also helped us to understand the resolution and conflicts and things like that. So horizontal reading always occurs within the fiction, within the family, which follows the actions of the fabula, the progression of the king, progression of the little prince from one storytelling to the other, to the pilot, to the man, and the storyteller, where the author, it can be author or whatever it is, and it continues with how the action from one planet to the other, and how he confronts different kinds of personalities in his life. That is what this thing. So it also, horizontal reading makes us to understand the connections between the episodes. It also makes us to understand to the narrative logic and the final resolution of the family. In what kind of a logic the narrative uses, and how it is. It also makes us to use the stage materials, and which are integrated into the narrative scheme. That is why the first thing talks about. You can see that there is a flight. It's a maquette used, where the children are coming with the sound of the flight, and the flight gets crashed, and things like that. So that is the first scene where the thing. Then we go into the episode of the flower, where the little prince tried to tell a story of the flower who he confronted in a planet. Here, the flower is metaphorically the lover, and how he behaves, and how he identified, it was nothing but a seed, then the grown, and the emotional exchange, and things like that. It goes into a particular. So certain kinds of a vertical reading makes this particular episode into episodic with breaks. So as I said, we have used different. So she acts as the little prince in this particular sequence, a little prince with the garland, talk to the flower, communicate with the flower. And we were working with certain kinds of stage signs, where the flower is there, the blossomed flower, and the little prince is with identified with the signification of the garland, because we keep changing the garland and pursuing the scene. So you can see the scenes where little prince, you have to read. So then there are scenes. In one scene, the flower asks, I am hungry, I need to be fed. And the little prince bring water and trying to feed the scene. Then this is the next scene, where then another little prince happens. This is a scene in another planet. The little prince confronts a king who is a deceited king, who always who always are not interested. So he wanted to oppress the people. So that is what the scene. So here there is a rat, and he is trying to. And that scene is there. I'm not elaborating. So he was in slumber. Little prince land in and coming in, and it goes. There's another scene. The next scene, he meets a conceited gentleman who always wanted to get praised by the others. So it is like that scene develops with that fellow looking at different mirrors and trying to say, how is my body? How is my face? We used a mirroring technique. So to establish the conceitedness and the self-proclamations of that particular character, and the scene grows with the confrontation with the little prince. So this is the theme of the little prince, where the little prince performance happens. You can see the little princes standing, different princes, different narratives, and I'm there in the side announcing, and there's a team, and it comes in. Okay, that is the little prince. Where that is the third part of my story. So what happens, happens is dramatic text is nothing but a kind of dramatic text is nothing but a linguistic text, but and with a kind of a linguistic science. But a particular kind of a reading, be it horizontal, be it vertical or paradigmatic, the reader can conceive and make that text into a kind of a theatrical text. Theatrical text with the non-verbal languages of gesture, music, scene, design, rhythm, whatnot, etc. It can become a performance text. It can make a stage event. It can make a complex array of signs. So this complex array of signs makes us to understand the dramaturgy. So if you wanted to you can make your literature, your sessions of literature, your interactions with the literature active by making a dramaturgical reading. Be it horizontal or be it vertical, you can make a reading, and you can get into a performance, and you can make it into a scene, and where the dramaturgy meets the attitude of the reception. So the attitude of the reception is met through the dramaturgy. So lots of pre-work, lots of planning, lots of speculated kind of a reading, lots of polished reading will make you to reach the audience ambitions. So that is what the reading of a text is aimed at.
Okay, thank you so much for that stimulating presentation, sir.
Thank you.
We'll go to the questions. First question is from Cynthia Magdalene. In the world full of Netflix and Amazon Prime, how far can theatre influence the millennial generation?
Okay, that's yeah, theatre is still surviving. You know, theatre is still active. That's what I was telling to you. Theatres are getting closed. National Theatre in England is crying. There's 1 year closure, but they have tried with some kind of live streaming, but they cannot generate money so they have closed down. Old Vic is closed down. Globe is closed down. So it is bleak. But theatre has not survived. Not only COVID. It has survived plague. It has survived World War. It has survived many things, and it is keep happening. So one cannot say that theatre is appealing. Theatre can be appealing, but theatre has changed its notions of performance. It is not only the illusions now. It is more than illusions. It has integrated all kind of mediality into their show. So if you look at a dance theatre, if you look at a Cirque du Soleil, if you look at our own Indian show like the show by Abhilash Pillai, that show Tempest Palatam, where he constructed a tent, and he made the tempest happens inside the tent, and the tent itself materially is that island where Zarkos is there, Caliban is there, Prospero is there, and things like that, and the circus acts are happening. It may have some kind of similarities with the Cirque du Soleil's presentation of Michael Jackson car or whatever it is. You can see Cirque was open also. Well, it closed down now, but was open with their shows, you know. So that is a different kind of a dimension. So you can see the show. I'm sticking on to Malayali shows. The Deepan show of a Cabinet of Caligari, where he has, you know, re-represented the Cabinet of Caligari cinema into theatre by infusing materiality, infusing projection and things like that. So theatre started integrating all those things. So I have no doubt that it will survive, but in what ways it survives and in what ways it gets appealing. But interestingly, if you look at the dance theatre or the Romello Castellucci shows, it is the young ones who see the theatre. That is what is much more encouraging for theatre to.
Okay. This is from Amrita Sneha. She's asking how far disability is addressed in performances. Disability.
Yeah, the new performances trying to address disability, because there is a lot of disability inclusion exclusion formulas are coming in to our own thought process. We started understanding the disabled people. Even in India, you have seen Ramayana performances, you know, with wheelchairs and things like that. So the disability is started. The disabled performers were, you know, framed, okay, in that way. But sadly, many of our theaters will not allow the disabled to get in and enjoy the theater, because we don't have many of the theaters with the disabled entries. So in terms of the proscenium constructed theater, but I'm sure that it is keep happening. So it is increasing. It is increasing, and we also don't have certain kinds of. But there are certain kinds of people attempting disability, attempting to use theater in its applicational mode to empower the people who has the other. In a differently abled people in the pedagogic stances, like in Hyderabad itself, the Hari Prasad Institute using theatre in healing. The National Institute is healing, hearing and impaired is using theatre for their pedagogy, for their improvement. And also there's a kind of a conceited effort by certain individuals like that Ramaswamy from Madurai, who is using theatre therapy as part of the addressing the issues of disability and things like that. There are quite a lot of people, quite a lot of things are happening because we have that logic of the inclusions and exclusions, and but I'm not much interested. I was more interested into the applicational level of theater in the with the concerns of the disability. That is what I'm much more interested. But there are people who showcasing the disability. Even the America Got Talent or the Indian versions of that, you can see the people with the disability, and there is a show where the talents are showcased. So things are encouraging, but is it the with the right spirit? Is it that much? These things are sad to be answered, but it is still there. At least it is there. Next. Hello.
Okay. The next question is from Grace Mariam. She would like you to talk about the socio-political context of Moovarasu Nadagam, especially from the perspective of conversion and indigenization of subaltern Christian community.
Yeah. Oh, that is a larger thing. Yes, this is the one-year Christian community is nothing but the converted Christian community, and they are also agricultural community. And the particular play, the particular Moorish Nadagam tradition has only a century old. It's like 167 years, rightly speaking. It has only stopped once. And this particular performance gives them an opportunity to come back to their own agricultural village, that is Atikod, in the Palakkad district, the bordering places between Tamil Nadu. And the performance is done in a Tamil, which is not spoken nowadays. And that also helps the performance, one part of the story of the performance to be portrayed, because it talks, very fanatically a pro-Christian agenda aimed at the proselytization. That is why the confrontation scene with the Maggie and the hero is so much critical. You, a secular man or a neutral man or a neutral audience, cannot go and say that it is digestible. It is one-sided. But it is done for the community, by the community, with its all kinds of sacred this thing. It was, of course, part of it. That is why I chose that that phase of the Christian performance tradition, which is theatrical, which starts with the medieval period. Why medieval period? Because it has taken the theme superimposed from the European content and mellifluously blended with the performance codes of us. You can see the traits of Terkutu costume in that, and you can see the variations and versions of the Terkutu movements in that. You can see a different kind of conventions like Vatiyar, Ashan, and the Kokok and the Satans playing the role of the comedy, Katiyakaran, Katiyakaran of the Tirkudu, in order to stitch together this particular, episodes of the narrative. So it is, of course, aimed at the proselytization once upon a time. But now it is not part of the proselytization. It is part of their cultural identity of that marginalized Christian group, which lives in that part and always in search of their own and always got migrated into different parts of Urus as part of their occupational things, but still come back to celebrate this particular heritage of their own in order to show up. They have a ritual obligation. That is their ritual right. That is their hereditary offering, which should sustain this particular form. So this particular form is very much intact. That is why I consider in the larger span of Christian performance traditions, which has, as I said, semi-theatrical to theaters, to the massive production of the songs, you all know that, to the evangelists, to the charismatics, to the prayer sessions and the healing and all kind of stuff. It all has a performance. For me, a performatologist looks at all these, even the Holy Mass as a performance. There's a lot of performance elements goes into it. I can frame it as a performance. So I can study it as a performance. So that I look at it. But interestingly, this Moorish Nadagam, which fosters their identity and it is intact, and it is annual, and it has the fervence. It ends up with a lot of the people, a lot of the devotees gets into the trance. How do a woman gets into a trance? The trance happens at the moment of the pinnacle of the devotion. So that is what it happens. That is why it survived the onslaught of all the other religions also. It had issues, it had cases, it had internal issues and external issues and things like that. And I don't know. There is the recent years shows kind of edited versions of the show. So it is also, even though it is an organically hybrid, it is also showing the characteristic of hybridity of keep changing and continuing, So that is what is happening. Anyway, I don't know, I will not be able to answer it completely, but it's nice that we can talk. You can mail me.
Yes, sir. Sure. It's a question from Aishwarya PR. Can we consider the use of technology like augmented reality in theatre performances? So if we do so, are we adapting the folk arts to the current scenario, or is it just destructive?
Yeah, there is some people are purists. Some people are, interestingly, very much open to use so many things. Some people are only worried about making it as a, contextual tourist performance. So you have to think in terms of the survival. If you think in terms of the survival of the fittest, you have to change in accordance with the time. But many of the time, the folk performances give its own internal choices to adapt the situations of technology, augmented reality, or whatever it is. So that is the freedom of the folk performances. If you, there is a Shashnarian logic, as I say, the core of the performance, if the core of the performance is intact, in the peripheral units will be ludic, will be playful. If the core is of ludic, playful, the peripheral units will be of intact with lots of ritualization. That happens. So you look at the case of the Theyyam. What happened? The technology came in the form of the lights, in the form of the staging, in the form of the color used in the pigment, in the form of the documentation and preservation, in the form of the Theyyam performs in the other context, like that adapted context. And even Theyyam is heading into a particular kind of a controversy now. What is that controversy? There is a Theyyam yard is going to be constructed. By taking out the entire cows, and the government is constructing a Theyyam yard where the designated space of the performer and the audience is there. Theyyam becomes, as I said, a kind of a performer and an audience. Kani and Kalikaran and Kani, not the Devam and the devotee. So that kind of a phase it is going to come. So it happens. Theyyam dynamically incorporates it. That's what I said in the case of the Suresh Perumannan. What happened? It is the digital framing of Theyyam which made him popular. It is the digital frames which is circulated in the mediatized world, in the digital world, made the Theyyam performers instilled some kind of notions to the Theyyam performers to take up certain acts which is beyond their capacity. That's when certain kinds of accidents happens. It's a classic case is Suresh Perumannan, who had a purposeful somersault. He used to somersault. That was a bad day, somersault, and he fall down. But what happens? The world of technology, the reality, the digital community. The digital community, you can call it as a WhatsApp Kutaima. That is a different kind of folk. So they have taken care of it. The humanity still survives. So whether you don't need to make sure that it is only authentic, it is traditional, it is sacred. It always gives some kind of an in-betweenness. As I said, the core is tight, the periphery is loose. The periphery is loose, then the core becomes tight. So that kind of a balance it maintains. So you can, of course, it will have certain kind of augmented realities. But how far the sensation happens as part of the reality is a different question. Whether you get the sensations, whether you get transformations, whether you get a feeling of standing in the serpentine queue for 6 to 7 hours to get the blessing of a Theyyam. And the blessing is the same for all, giving you a manjal kuri and bless you the same. And you are happy, you are in this, or you standing in the queue for a communal feast where the hunting is, even though the hunting is prohibited, it has been hunted and manured and manipulated, and the bait is being, given as an offering, So these kinds of dynamics works in this. That is why Theyyam tradition is dynamic and alive in the present moment. It will incorporate. You cannot restrict. It will incorporate the imposition of the Theyyam yard. It will incorporate the halogen lights by changing the pigments used. It will incorporate the plungers, use of the dimmers to close down and open it up, the lights and the sequences. But in future, you cannot call it as a deterioration. You can call it as change and continuity. Many of the dynamic traditions go through the phases of change and continuity. I will say that it is something like tradition and inventions in its continuous simultaneity. So that is what happens. Okay.
So we're getting more questions. Will that be fine if we take up a few more?
I have no problem, but all the questions I cannot answer. I can restrict. You can restrict. Your time is important.
Okay.
If I am repeating, if the questions are repeating,
sure.
They can mail me. I can give my library. I can give. I'm not a celebrity, so anyone can talk to me.
Many of our participants are asking whether they can have your presentation slides, like the tables and all.
Oh, that I think it is. Oh yeah, that it's already shared. I should send it, right? Okay. I will do that. It's not a problem. It's just a wish list.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Grace Mariam. Can you elaborate a little more on the Bhaktinian notion, organic and inorganic hybridity with respect to Chavatu Nadagam and Moovarasu Nadagam?
Yeah, that's what I have tried to do, but it was the time was the issue. So Bhaktinian organic hybridity is seen in the Moovarasu Nadagam. That's what I tried to say. And the Bhaktinian inorganic intentional hybridity is seen in the Chavatu Nadagam. Why? That is why I brought in the ideas of the core and the periphery. How this particular performance becomes core. That is why I said the categorization. I started with the Bhaktin and got into the Robertian notions of classification. There I have used that is why I said the intentional hybridity and unconscious hybridity and things like that. So that is the where simply speaking, what I will try to say is you can see a mellifluous blend of theme into the event in Moovarasu Nadagam. There the contestation is not happening, even though the paradoxes are there. That is the quality of the organic hybridity, where it is internal contestations are not there. But in the inorganic hybridity, it's a pigeon. It has that contestation. It is always one's against the other. That is why you take the Chavatu Nadagam music. It's a blend of West and the East. It's a blend of band and the chenda. It's a blend of two sounds. It is polyphonic. It is beautiful. It is fusion. But you can still see the contestation. It is a blend of you look at the costume of the Chavatu Nadagam performer. It is colorful. It has some kind of a Western design. But it is made with our own performance codes, and they wear the shoes in order to supplement the actors with the song. But they do the chuadus, which is South Indian. So it is like the contrast is visible, but the effect is interesting. So that is what I'm trying to say. So you look at I will tell you one particular interesting case of the Royston Abel's Manganiyar seduction. Where Manganiyar seduction is for the last act question also it works out. In the case of the Manganiyar seduction, who is this Manganiyars? Manganiyars are nothing but bards. They are the Muslim bards of the Rajasthan, which is migrants. This is my minuscule community. They came from the Bangladesh and put it in the Rajasthan. They sing a song. That songs are sung with the instrument like kamacha, it sounds differently. Royston brings Royston Abel is a Malayali, he's a director who lives in Delhi, and who brings the, Cain and Abel company of Indian Shakespeare dramas. Okay, figure out, you can see his productions. But Manganiyar Seduction, what does he brings? He package it into the squares, 36 squares of performers. He says it is the booths of Copenhagen where the prostitutes are displayed in the red booths, littered booths, So it is some kind of a seduction. So a sedacious boothing presentation with an anchor like a sutrada and the sound tailored with the light effects. It is a what do you call, salubrious act of performance. You see that it is hybrid, it is blending, it is contesting. So it is an in between. That is why the performance that is one of the performances, is the most successful Indian performance. One has to see that it has traveled all over the world. It has traveled a large amount of festivals. It has traveled huge, humongous amount of space. So if chance is there, you can go into the YouTube and have a piece of Manganiyar Selections, even though without knowing the music, without knowing the knowledge, without knowing that many of the songs are sung as part of their death ceremony, we enjoy that, that songs. That is very interesting to know that. So a kind of a decontextualization happens, but it is sensorial, sonic. So
I would combine two of our participants' questions. Vinita Krishnan is asking to know more about feminist theatre in India and gender discourse. And Anakha Biyar is asking, can we say that theatre as a language is inherently patriarchal and the women theatre groups are bringing in some changes to it?
Yeah, that is true. The traditions, unfortunately, the traditions which I dealt with is a patriarchal, and it has a lot of male centricness. You know that Bible is also like that. So it is that is there. But there are quite a lot of changes that are happening. You can see there is a book by A. Mange. She had a book on Indian feminist theatres. That's quite an interesting book. It is produced by. It's an interesting book. So that gives a very, very, very interesting way of looking at the Indian women performers, directors, their plays, their perspectives, and how it works out in the Indian scenario. So that would be the best thing to look at it. Of course, the interventions of the women directors. In certain phases of time in India, the women directors were very much prominent in the pan-Indian scenario. You look at the case of the Kirti Jain to Anuradha Kapoor to Nilaman Singh to what do you call her name? She's no more. Rudari. Usha Ganguly to Shalaja to Srija to many people. There are quite a lot of women. Women and women centricness, their own perspective. It was pretty good. It was pretty good, and still it is pretty good. But in the larger amount, you can't see. But theatre performance as a complex scenario, there is still lots of men centeredness is still there. That is true. But I'm sure that it will change, and the Indian scenario shows it's changed. There's a kind of a new theatre association happens in India that is called Nata. It is headed by Shalaja. It's a woman, and it's a left-oriented organization headed by a woman. So the perspectives will definitely change. So these are the things happening. But I cannot. I'm sorry to say that the traditions which I dealt is highly patriotic. But interestingly, in the case of the Chautanadagam, now the women are performing. One of the women performers were there in the Chautanadagam scenario. That is the Moli. She was in the cover page of Vanida magazine, and she was basically a Chautanadagam actress. She was one of the actors. She was like a firebrand. She was doing the women roles in the Chotanadagam, all the queens roles in the Chotanadagam with her faded face, and she was a flying angel. She was doing a lot of Chotanadagam. She's also a good actress. She never got a big, good amount of scenes in the cinema, but she's a very good actor, you know. So this is like that. So she was one of the rare actresses, and now there are actresses who do Chotanadagam. And I'm sure that now it has come into the youth festival scenario. Definitely the sisters schools are taking it up, and all women are performing, and it's welcoming change. And there is a performance of all women Chotanadagam also done by Fotugachi, one father, hosting father. I forgot his group's name. Anyway, that's it.
So Akshaya Lakshmi asks, how effective is theatre performances in healing process?
Dealing process in the sense
In healing.
Oh, healing. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Theatre itself is having a applied category called drama therapy. So drama therapy is not a smaller subject. It's not as a new subject. It has been there from a long time, from the jail Morno time. It has been effective in many circumstances. But it needs a kind of a conducive context. Then only the initiator can heal it. And another important healing aspect of the theatre is practiced by Jonathan Fox, playback theatre, where the group of people coming in and witnessing themselves, sharing themselves, there what happens is nothing but a healing. You share, you get the courage to talk, you get the courage to commemorate, you get the courage to speak out, and the entire community takes it. So it is nothing but a bigger healing. So from the jail Mornos to psychodrama to Jonathan Fox's playback theatre to the Augusto balls, theatre of the operas, and the multiple variations of it is a conscious applications of theatre which aimed at healing at different levels, whether it is psychodramatic, whether it is social healing, whether it is whatever it is. You know, many of the folk performances also heal, no? When you go, when you participate, you get healed. Isn't it so?
We'll have two more questions, sir.
Yeah, that's right.
Pradibha
I'm
is
also
asking.
tired.
Okay. Tamasha, a particular type of musical performance from Maharashtra, can it be considered as a theatre? So also the performances in Bollywood movies, Nach Ganas, can we add them as theatrical performances?
Yeah, all are theatrical. That's why I have a broader definition. No, theatre. That's why I have tried to use it. It's all our. Tamasha is a pakka theatrical tradition. It is into a very commercial tradition. Yeah, as you rightly said, Tamasha, Notanki, and the Nachkanas and all kind of things. You know, it has its own conspicuousness. It has its own inner politics and things like that. That has made the theatre, made the Bollywood thrive. And you can interestingly see, you can also watch, Ya Behurubiya by Atul Kumar. He uses the Nautangi and Tamasha in portraying the Shakespeare, Shakespeare's play into a theatre. So why don't you watch a little bit of some portions are available in the YouTube. So that gives you a confidence that how Tamasha as a folk art form is applied into a mainstream commercial theatre practice. And Tamasha also can be a theatre. Why? There is a specified number of performers trained in conventions and a specific set of audience. It is corresponded. It is interacted at certain levels where the patron comes and gives the money to the artist, throws the money to the artist and things like that. So it has different layers of performance. So you can better call it as a performance rather than a theatrically framed show. But why it all become theatre? Because of the proscenium theatre. The imposed proscenium theatre by the Westerners converted all our staging practices into a kind of a framed viewing. Performers there, actors here. actors there and the audience here. You know, the kind of a unilinear correspondence started happening because of the framed illusionistic theater reality. And the tamasha unconsciously has fallen into the trap of, into that framed realities. Not because of the tamasha, because of the space, availability of the space was that. You know, it's not because of the tamasha traditions wanted to do that. It happened to the Yakshagana also. They have also gone into the proceedings from the open air. It has little happened to the Jatra, but it has also happened to the Jatra in Banga, but the audience stay in and around. That is much more circular. So that's what is happening. Okay.
The final question, sir, from Sandra Sebastian. How far the relevance of performance spaces are reducing in these COVID times as they are economically non-self-supporting?
Yeah, COVID times are bad times, not only for theater, but also for all kind of entertainment industry and all kind of education industry also. We all understood that our lives are irrelevant. The education was not, or the education business was not, is relevant at the time of COVID, isn't it? So it was not an essential necessity. So we are into a kind of a very difficult, different situations, which luckily people of our generation never faced it. But we are luckily now going through such kind of situations, and the spaces are getting closures. Yes, of course, and it is going to affect. It will have a long-standing, what you call, a long-standing influence, impact on the life of performers, groups, and things like that. So we can metaphorically look at the Philip Todd's Joker movie. What will happen to a performer and how the performer changes and how the performer transforms. Some kind of a revolutionized things may happen. It was like a joke. Don't take it seriously. So something may happen. But as a performatologist or as somebody who loves to live in the performance, always positively think that the spaces will come back, Globe will reopen, National will reopen their business, and also we will have multiple shows to thrive us. We will have Bacardi National Highway shows and things like that. We will have serendipity shows and things like that. Okay. So let's hope for the best. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, it was nice. I don't know. I have answered so many questions, but my mail ID is jputhussery@gmail.com. You please share.
Yeah, we'll share it with them.
Yeah, somebody wanted to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really, it gave us a lot of food for thoughts.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being kind enough to answer all these questions.
Yeah, it's okay. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.